Greetings and salutations, fellow book readers. This is Mark, and the book I will review today is Beyond Good and Evil. Before we continue, this is personalized limited edition of Beyond Good and Evil with leather cover designed and made by me. At the end of the video, I will tell you a couple of ways of how you can get one for yourself if you are interested. Now let's get back to the review. Beyond Good and Evil is a philosophical book written by Friedrich Nietzsche and published in 1886. Nietzsche can be considered the first modern philosopher and the first philosopher of the 20th century, even though he died in 1900. Nietzsche was an eccentric figure in his writings and his life, and led a rather unorthodox lifestyle. He wrote all his books in the decade between his resignation from the University of Basel and the psychological meltdown he suffered at 45. And the last 10 years of his life he spent as a vegetable. Nietzsche in his writings showed profound knowledge of the Western society, which allowed him to predict with great accuracy future social and political changes. When he wrote his famous quote, "God is dead," he meant to say that the old ways are not working anymore, and there is need to invent a new form of thinking. Nietzsche is probably, of all the philosophers, the one that is the most misunderstood, and he himself said that his ideas will not be appreciated until a couple of centuries after his death. Because of the complexities of his thinking, his writings have been widely interpreted and applied in many contradictory ways. What is Beyond Good and Evil about? It is a critical dissection of the past philosophers and philosophies, and further, Nietzsche tries to establish new philosophical principles for the future thinkers. Now, a bit of the plot. Well, there isn't any plot, so instead, let's just break down the structure of the book, and I will include some of my own interpretations of what Nietzsche is saying. Beyond Good and Evil is divided into 9 parts, and they contain 296 sections. If that number scares you, don't worry, some sections consist of nothing more than one sentence. So, part 1, on the prejudices of philosophers, talks about philosophies being constructed on the foundation of personal prejudices and unfair preferences for the truth, when non-truth could be as useful. Nietzsche says that illusion is as valuable as reality and permits man to go on. I would say sometimes illusion can determine reality and can be more important than reality itself. We can take American elections as an example. The process could be corrupted, but as long as the majority believes it is fair, the stability is maintained and democracy continues. Reverse the illusion and the reality changes. If most people believe the voting is corrupted, then the reality will reflect this belief, regardless if it is real or not. Nietzsche defines past philosophies as autobiographical confessions of its creators and considers them too influenced by personal opinions and experiences. He takes a shot at the Stoics and uses them as an example. He paints them as hypocritical and in struggle with nature and in a kind of love and hate relationship with it. According to Nietzsche, their struggle is brought by will to power, which he considers the driving instinct for all of our actions. Nietzsche also lets us know that Kant made us believe that we have something that we don't have. Descartes made us feel sure about things that are not sure, and free will is a lot more complex than it appears. In part 2, The Free Spirit, Nietzsche claims that free spirits thrive in isolation to avoid being misunderstood by society, and yet they have a need for social contact to gather information, knowledge, and do research. So in the contact with the society, free spirits need to mask or simplify their ideas, since the average human is not able to understand complex thoughts. Nietzsche compares pre-moral society where the action was judged by its consequences and modern or moral society where action is judged by its origin. And isn't that true today, where the meaning of what is said depends on who said it? Nietzsche states that all our actions are caused by our drives, and the drives are the only real part of our lives. This is the definition of will to power. According to Nietzsche, the universe is in constant change and will is the only thing in synchrony with it. And to end the chapter, Nietzsche calls on the free spirits to come out of hiding and lay a foundation for the future philosophies. In part 3, What is Religious?, Nietzsche dissects Christianity. He concludes that constant need for sacrifices is turning modern man into a non-believer, but he still is religious. Nietzsche says God is dead because we killed him. What he means is we are exchanging old religion, Christianity, for new ones such as nationalism, communism, feminism, etc., etc. According to Nietzsche, Christianity made us weak because it made us contain our aggressive instincts, and now, to compensate for it, we are turning to science and becoming nihilistic. And this change will lead to wars unlike any before. This statement might be taken as a prediction for the 2 world wars that came a few decades later. Part 4, Epigrams and Interludes, consists of more than 100 short statements. The subjects are morality, differences between men and women, Christianity, sexuality, and German nationalism. You can get some great one-line truths from reading this section, such as from a few examples I found interesting. Under peaceful conditions, the militant man attacks himself. Woman learns how to hate in proportion as she forgets how to charm. There is no such thing as moral phenomena, but only a moral interpretation of phenomena. But only a moral interpretation of phenomena. In revenge and in love, woman is more barbarous than man. He who fights with monsters should be careful lest he thereby becomes a monster. One must repay good and ill, but why just to the person who did us good or ill? To talk much about oneself may also be a means of concealing oneself. One loves ultimately one's desires, not the thing desired. Some of these quotes will make you think and analyze their meaning, and others are just Nietzsche's personal opinions, not really relevant to the real world. In part 5, A Natural History of Morals, Nietzsche tells us that morality is limited by the time, place, and beliefs of the moralist. Basically, morality is relevant, so moral philosophers can only talk about their own morality. People not only differ in what they want, but also in why they want it. And Nietzsche seems to despise moralizers for their generalizations. The conclusion is that the morals are based on fears of the moralizer, and in general we condemn what is not common or accepted. In part 6, We Scholars, Nietzsche attempts to differentiate between scholars and philosophers. He claims the latter are above the former. Also, the scholars are mainly preoccupied with the past, where philosophers focus on the future and seem to be out of place in the present. Nietzsche tries to define the real philosophers. He says their task is to not only describe the world, but also to explain it. The real philosophers are creators, and as all creators, they are interpreters, and this gives them the power to impose their views on us and influence our future. Part 7, Our Virtues, talks about lower, common man's envy of the upper, more gifted individuals. Nietzsche also, indirectly, reiterates his "what doesn't kill me makes me stronger" phrase when he tells us to celebrate suffering instead of avoiding it. He also lets us know that our primitive instinct for cruelty is more alive than ever because we have turned it against ourselves in a kind of psychological sadomasochism. Nietzsche's example is our search for knowledge as more intellectual beings, which leads us into discovering that we descend from apes and are not very different from them. To end it, Nietzsche gives us a few more of his not so favorable opinions about women, but in his defense, he starts it with a disclaimer: these are, after all, only my truths. In part 8, Peoples and Fatherlands, Nietzsche gives us his opinion about nations and nationalism. He talks positively about mixing the Europeans in what might be considered an early endorsement for the European Union-like institution. He divides Europeans based on their nationality into two races, feminine and masculine. Further, Nietzsche gives us his positive opinion of the Jews and reinforces his label as an anti-Semite. He considers Jews to be the strongest race in Europe and criticizes German anti-Semitism as fear of the Jewish strength. It would seem that's the part Hitler remembered when reading Nietzsche, and based on it he concluded Jews were a threat to the German ambitions. To finish the chapter, Nietzsche praises individuals such as Napoleon, Goethe, Stendhal and Schopenhauer, who are able to rise above their national identity and see themselves as Europeans. In the last part, 9, What is Noble?, Nietzsche asserts the need for multi-class society to be able to progress. The class divisions allow gifted individuals to rise above the masses and be free to create, to advance the general society. And this pretty much describes the evolution of classes within any social system. He says the goal of society is to allow a few gifted individuals to rise up and shine, and there always will be a need for some type of master-slave relationship. Nietzsche defines life and nature as exploitation, and trying to eliminate it would be madness. This is contrary to the modern progressive movement's ideas that the classless society and end of exploitation is mark of progress. But looking at their failures, I will say Nietzsche got it right. Nietzsche says that in the classless society, gifted individuals will be misunderstood and marginalized, thus stifle progress. And in the end, he says he himself will be misunderstood since our language lacks the words to fully express his ideas. And that's the beyond good and evil. To sum it up, Nietzsche's impact on the modern world has been profound. Even if you never heard of him, your everyday life has been impacted by his ideas. Phrases such as "God is dead" and "What doesn't kill me makes me stronger" were coined by Nietzsche and are quoted by individuals all over the world. But the problem with repeating his one-liners is that most people use them in the wrong context. One needs to study Nietzsche to understand him, if it is possible to understand him at all. But at minimum, you will get the background and the foundation for his ideas to form your own opinions. There are so many misconceptions and contradictions in the interpretations of Nietzsche's writings that he is equally appealing to humanists, fascists, communists, and many other groups with contradicting beliefs. Well, perhaps he would not be so appreciated by the feminists if they have read some of the statements written in this book. Anyway, Beyond Good and Evil is a good introduction to Nietzsche as a thinker, but there is so much more in it that it might seem a bit overwhelming. If you are interested in Nietzsche and evolution of the modern philosophy, the book makes for an interesting reading. But if you are not, then the experience probably will be boring and even psychologically painful. Okay, let's talk about the physical book. The book I am holding is a paperback which I transformed into a hardcover leather-bound edition. To make the cover, I use grade A, naturally tan hide I buy from a tanner in North Spain. It is the same leather Louis Vuitton uses to make his bags, so it is top quality. I do all the processing of the leather myself. First, I designed the cover, which what I did here, I took the Picasso's abstract painting of his mistress, titled Girl Before a Mirror, since I thought it represented the abstract concept of seeing ourselves the way we want to see, somewhere between good and evil. This is the back with the blurb, and inside the front cover I printed a quote from the book. If you want to see a more detailed video where I explain how I transform paperback into leather hardcover, click on the link in the description. I will make a maximum of 100 editions of each title. Each one will be numbered and initialed, and the numbers will go in chronological order from 2 up, since number 1 stays with me. The price will be around $100, so if you would like me to make one for you, you can click below on my email and send me a message. I do not guarantee I will do it, since it will depend on the time I have available, access to leather, and if I can get my hands on the copy of the book. Now, if you're not willing to spend the $100, but you still want the book, what you can do is click below on the PayPal link and donate $3 or more to my channel, and for every 100 donations I will make a lottery and draw one name, and the winner will receive the book. So if you are cheap but feel lucky, this might be the way to do it. Also, your donations give me the extra motivation to make the book reviews, and I appreciate them very much, so thank you in advance. One more thing, when you make your donation, remember to include the title of the book you would like to win. The book itself is beautiful. Visually it has a very nice texture, it smells great, and the more you handle it, the more beautiful it will become. And it makes a great gift for yourself or somebody who appreciates books. So, if you want one, don't snooze, or you might lose. Well, that's it, so let's end it here. And until next time, keep your ear close to the ground and read a book. Adios.